a video on nettles. So spring is here at last, and nettles have started to grow, so we can actually eat nettles, and they are delicious. Really good substitute for things like spinach or leafy greens, and they're free, and I'm sure they'll be more nutrient dense than a lot of things like spinach, which just tends to be mostly water. So you don't you've got to be careful when you pick them, obviously, because they're stinging nettles, so hence why we're wearing gloves. And the stems can be a little bit woody, so what we really want is we just want the tops of them. So if you imagine, that's a little bit floppy because I picked them earlier today. So if you imagine, we just want the tops, so that's the very top there. We just want like the fourth, like the top two bits of leaves. We don't want the stalk because it can be a bit woody, and the further we go down the stalk it gets even woodier, so it's just that bit that we want. So that goes on the compost. That's the bit that we're going to use. So you can do it as you pick them, and you just need to be careful when you pick them, obviously because of the stinging, but also because you don't want them too close to the ground, because that's where all the things like rodents are going to be, and also where the dogs go to the toilet as well. So you need to kind of pick them when they're about a foot high and just the top of the nettles, just like that. We're going to pick them, we're going to wash them, and then we're going to cook them, and you will see. But it's a funny thing. It's like free food, but we're so far removed these days from eating things like nettles, which people used to do in the past, certainly did, and people used to eat grass as well, from some accounts. So we're going to pick through them. That'll be fine. Maybe just whip that bit off there, and then we're going to wash them using the gloves as well. Cold water a couple of times. That'll get rid of any bugs, dirt, or any other kind of things on them. And then we're going to cook them. And what we can do is we can cook them and we can freeze them. They don't keep particularly well in this kind of state. Couple of days and they really start to deteriorate, so you kind of need to be picking them, washing them, cooking them, and then freezing them if you want to keep them for a long term, or turning them into soup. But I wouldn't advise freezing the soup. I would advise actually cooking the nettles down and then defrosting the cooked nettles rather than actually making the soup, because you tend to lose a lot of greenness. So I think that's it. Yeah, so I'll go through them, I'll pick them, and then we'll cook them, and we'll just kind of see. But we're going to cook them like spinach or like leafy greens, and then we can freeze them. But yeah, that's it for the moment. I'll stop the video and I'll wash them, and then we'll come back when they're ready to be cooked. Right, nettles have been washed a couple of times, and they've come back to life a little bit as well. So we're going to steam them in a hot pan with a little bit of water, like that. Just like we would do with spinach. Sometimes we use oil or butter with spinach, but we just wanted to cook them, so they'll lose a little bit of volume, so we can freeze more of them, and they take up less space in the freezer. So, in temperature up, I can take the glove off now, and it's just a case of moving them around in the pan and we'll steam, and then we'll be able to freeze them a lot easier once they're cooked. They don't freeze like leafy greens, they don't freeze particularly well if they're not cooked. So a little bit more water. There's quite a lot of water in them already, so we just need to be careful. If you're going to freeze them and then use them for something else, you might want to have to squeeze the excess water out of them once you've defrosted them, and then you've got like a drier kind of product like this. But once they're cooked, we don't need to worry about them being still stinging nettles and do you a bit of damage if you want to eat them. But we want to cook them quickly so we keep the green, and then we want to cool them down quickly as well so they keep that vibrant colour. So we'll put them on best way to cool things down quickly is put things on a tray, so we've got more surface area so it cools down quicker. Spinach would have cooked by now. Nettles take a little bit longer, but as you can see, can we see a little bit further? It's lost a lot of its volume of that, so it's going to take up less space in the freezer, which is a good thing. It needs a little bit more water. I'm not going to season it because there's no need. You can just eat it now, just like, I don't want to actually. I'll cook them a little bit low before I eat it. But you could eat it now and you could eat it just like wilted spinach. And it's not like anything you tasted before, kind of quite an irony, not really cabbagey, so it's not really like a brassica or anything like that. But not for the squeamish, don't feed it to the kids, I don't think they'd like it. Unless they're adventurous. But you take a leaf, so you can take a leaf, that's all the sting out of it's gone. So, what does it taste like? Nothing like anything. It's not like a rocket, it's not like a watercress, it's not like a spinach. It's not like anything like that. It's got a different flavour to it. But delicious and free. And you can go and pick it, get yourself out for a walk. So, that's now as cooked as we want it to be. So, spread it out onto a tray. Like that, and it will cool down quickly. And then we can freeze it, and then you can use it as you will. So, that's spinach, and how to cook it, and how to freeze it. So, let it go cold, and then put it in a container, and stick it in the freezer, and it's there for any time you need it. It will keep, before you cook it, in leaf form, it will keep a couple of days in the fridge, not a problem, in a sealed container. Give it a wash, and it will keep a couple of days in the fridge. Cook it, and then it'll last another couple of days in the fridge, or cook it and freeze it. If you don't cook it, it'll probably go a little bit slimy when you freeze it and defrost it. That generally tends to have things like, if you think like herbs, if you ever want to freeze herbs, it's always best to freeze them. When you freeze them, they tend to go a little bit slimy, so it's best to preserve them in different kind of ways. But things like basil and mint certainly go a little bit slimy when you freeze them if you haven't cooked them or preserved them in any kind of way before you freeze them. Same with spinach, same with nettles. It's going to go slimy if you don't cook it beforehand. So, and it also takes up less room if you want to call it, if you freeze if you cook it and then you freeze it. But anyway, nettles, it's free. They're delicious, and I'll look into it. But I'm sure they've got to be much more nutrient dense than something like spinach, which is just basically just green water, isn't it? Let's be honest. And like most lettuces. But there we go. Nettles. Ta-da! Right, so our nettles have cooled, and just before we freeze them, I thought I'd better show you how much liquid is in them. So if you've just got to be careful, you've just got to be aware if something's got some liquid in it before you start using it for something else, and kind of maybe take things into consideration. So, alright, if you just wanted to reheat it just like that, you'd just be able to saute it off in a little bit of butter or olive oil, and that would quickly come back to temperature and be kind of quite nice. But if you were going to use it in something like a pie or a lasagna or something like that, which would be very nice, you just need to be aware that the amount of water that's in the nettles. So we'll give a quick demonstration, but you'll be able to see, give it a squeeze, loads of liquid wants to come out of it. So you just need to be a little bit careful of that. That's fine, there's nothing wrong with that water. It's just like spinach water, that type of thing. But that is, you're left with that. So I'm not going to squeeze it out before I freeze it, but I'm going to remember it might, when it comes out of the freezer, there's going to be that water that's going to in it, and we might not want that in what we're going to be cooking with. So if I was I make like a phyllo pie, which is a little bit like a Greek pie that's got greens in it, and sometimes I make it with nettles. I wouldn't want that amount of liquid in the in with the pie, because it would make the pie soggy. So we don't want that. So we just have to remember that there's lots of liquid in things. We just need to give it a squeeze it out. So, but anyway, to freeze it, dead easy, in a container. I don't put things really in bags anymore because I don't really like plastic waste. But that in a container, press it down, and then what we call it, pack as much in as possible, and then these containers hold about 1 litre. So what you can do, a litre in volume is about a kilogram, something like that. So you just cut it in half, take it out of the freezer. Frozen, you'd be able to cut through it, so I'd just cut that in half. I've just wanted half of it, and then put the rest back in the freezer. But anyway, that's nettles. They're free, they're abundant, and they are delicious, and a suitable alternative for things like a rocket, or spinach, or watercress, or any kind of leafy greens, so like kale or anything like that. But delicious, and a good way of storing them for time for when there isn't nettles around. But anyway, there you go. It's free. It's, why aren't you using it? Why aren't you eating them?